guys, Ken here, your thrifty apprentice. Happy Sunday everyone, and welcome back to another thrifty review. In today's quick review, we are going to be taking a look at Turner Artist Watercolor. Finally, I am getting around to this review. I did the unboxing video quite some time ago. You will see a card pop up in the top right hand corner of the screen in case you're interested in seeing that. And I've been using and testing them. I've done quite a bit with them. We're going to take a look at all of that, and I'm going to tell you guys my thoughts and opinions based on testing and using the paints. Now, this video was not planned, so the crafting video that I had planned for today, I am going to have to push it back, which means that you guys are going to get 4 videos next week. You are going to get me on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Wow. So just to make up and make sure that I can stay on schedule, because I have videos planned out and I don't want to disrupt anything. So let's jump into this. So FYI, Turner is a Japanese-based company that produces many different mediums for artists. They make professional watercolor paints, gouache, and acrylic gouache, just to name a few. So if you remember, the paint set came in a pretty generic style box with simple, straightforward design, which actually I kind of like that. The lid of the box is full of information if you flip it here on the inside, and claims that are made by the company towards the quality of the paint. The lid also includes light fast and transparency ratings with a chart that breaks down what that information means, which is really handy. You don't find that on a lot of paint sets, not in that detail. So, taking a look at the tubes. So the tubes are 5 milliliters each, with an easy to screw off top. They don't require any puncturing or for you to remove any foil from the neck of the tube. Each tube contains a relevant information, including the color name, the series, pigment number, light fast ratings, transparency ratings, the AP seal of approval, and the tubes are small, in all honesty, compared to some other professional paints. But they did seem to be pretty full. I mean, that was pretty, didn't have any issues there. So that's just kind of a recap of the unboxing. Now let's move on to talking about the actual paints. So when painting the paints, I did not experience a lot of paint or binder separation. For the most part, they were pretty consistent, with the unique Maya colors being much harder in consistency than most others. And if you remember from the unboxing, there are 7 unique, I think there are 7 unique Maya colors in the entire Turner range. And of those 7, 3 were included in this 18 color set. So when I say Maya colors, that's what I'm referring to. They are special colors that are specifically or indigenous to the Turner Artist line of paints. All right, now I just wanted to clarify that. So let's see. I also found that the 2 browns included seemed more solid than the other colors, including the Maya colors. They were a little harder in consistency than those were. With that said, though, the paints did dry down well, and there were no signs of cracking in the paints at all. I did leave the palette dirty here just so you guys can take a look. I did a lot of color mixing throughout the times that I used the paints. They, re-wet really well. I can still use up that paint if I wanted to, or if I was gonna clean it off, so have you. That's what that is. But as you can see, there's no grittiness or grainness. They're not matte. There's no chalkiness at all to the paint. So all of that is really, really cool. Of course, I wasn't expecting there to be, because these are a professional paints or professional paint set. So I swatched the paints out on 100% cotton watercolor paper, and I didn't experience much of a problem in the initial watered down layer. The paint seemed to re-wet relatively well. However, I did experience some issues with the Maya colors. I found myself having to scrub the paints to kind of get them to release. And and they seem much weaker in pigment saturation than the other colors included in the set. Okay, once re-wet though, I found that they had a really weird sort of gummy texture on the brush, and I always needed to mix them out on the palette before transferring it to my project. However, I can say after a couple of uses, that problem seemed to dissipate. For that gumminess, you know, after, because I used them a lot, so that gumminess did seem, or maybe I just got used to it, I'm not sure, but yeah, I am sure it really did seem to dissipate. And you couple this with the fact that they're not made up of the most light fast pigments, I can honestly say that I think the inclusion of the Maya colors were probably more of a con than a pro. I would have much preferred they replaced the Maya red with like an alizarin crimson, although that's not a very light fast pigment normally, neither is the Maya. So I would rather have one that was saturated. Since they're both gonna, you know, be fugitive pigments, I would rather have a saturated one. But the Maya color was pretty weak, and that's more of their magenta leaning red in the set. I would have preferred to have lemon yellow instead of the Maya yellow. Same thing there. I would have preferred to have a Prussian blue instead of the Maya blue. So in my opinion, they really could have exchange those three colors. I mean, I'm just not a fan of the Maya colors. That's what it is. They're just goopy and gummy, and I didn't enjoy them at all. Now, there's an ivory black in here, which is not the most saturated of the colors. I know that they have a Mars black, if I'm not mistaken, in that line, and I wish that particular black had been in this set, mainly because it would have mixed well and it would have offered granulation. And we're going to get to that in just a second as well. So the colors glazed with no problem, but I did notice an increase in opacity the more you layered the paints. Now, sometimes this led to visual brush strokes that required you to kind of work them out. I found that the paints had very little flow, with most of them not moving at all unless I seemed to have hip it and spread it out. Yet the colors are saturated and they're bright, and for the most part they're pretty transparent. I found them to be very high in pigment, with the exception of the Maya colors. Let me say that, with the exception of the Maya colors. So that is 3 of the 18, but the other 15 seem to be pretty saturated with pigment. And with that said, for the pigment makeup of the range, which I looked at online, I found that the brand uses, you know, fugitive pigments that artists should be aware of. Now, in this 18 set specifically, it's only the Maya colors. Yeah, let's see here. Looking at this really quick, I did a quick color mixing. The colors mixed together really well. They were really clean. Didn't experience any issues with that. Now, I used that Maya red there because I felt like the permanent scarlet was a little bit too orange leaning in order to get a pretty purple with the ultramarine. And then the fire red, pretty middle of the road between the two. But again, not quite the magenta mixing color that I was looking for. So I did go ahead and use the Maya red. I had to put down 2 or 3 layers in order to even get it that saturated. But once I did, it mixed pretty well with the ultramarine, and I was able to get a pretty decent purple there. And again, another decent saturated orange when mixed with the yellow. And then, of course, the blue and the yellow mixed to make beautiful greens. Now, you could get a beautiful range of greens, which I'm going to show you guys in just a moment. But they do include a sap green and a phthalo green blue shade. So you're going to get some pretty clean, cute mixes. Now, there's a turquoise blue in here, and we're going to talk about that in just a moment. I mixed a dark or a gray using the ultramarine blue and the burnt sienna, and I was able to get a more cooler dark by mixing the ultramarine blue and the burnt umber. So you can make your own blacks, you can make your own darks and tones of grays, which is really, really good. Here we did a salt test. They reacted really well to salt, which normally paints do, which was a good thing. And I am going to do a lift test with you guys on screen as I normally do. So let me grab my little scrub brush and get some water on it. And I put a couple of colors down so we could go all across it. This is some really economical watercolor paper that I did this on. So this is the paper peeling that you see. And as you can see, you can scrub back to white to get some highlights. I did want to put that purple down because I wanted to see how staining it was. And this again is a really economical watercolor paper, but it lifts pretty well even in that paper. So I can imagine on a paper that has more size than this, of a little bit better quality, you could probably get better lifting ability. But that's pretty decent even for a really budget paper. Now, as far as granulation is concerned, I swatched the turquoise blue because I wanted to see if it was going to granulate. I read somewhere that it was supposed to be one of the more granulating colors in the 18 set. But as you can see there, I mean, it granulates a little bit. It's not a lot like I would, you know. And then the granulation kind of clutters together. I don't know. It's a little weird, but it's a pretty color. I think it's a pretty color. All right, let's look at some examples of some paintings really quickly. A lot of these are going to be tutorials on the channel, or demos on the channel, so you will see cards popping up in case you want to access them. So here is one of the first things I did, and it's a poppy. It turned out pretty well, I believe. I was able, and this is where I was talking about it lives on a better paper. This was a little bit, I believe it's a little bit better grade paper in here. And I didn't try to do a lot of lifting. I just lifted a little bit. They worked really well in a mixed media aspect because I used them with Prismacolor pencil, which added a little body and a little life to the overall flower, I do believe. Next, I did 3 different little compositions here in a spread for the Frugal Crafters Sketchbook Floozy Challenge. This was week 2 to do a spread. And you're actually going to see this has already come out. Well, by the time this video comes up, this should be out, this should be out, and this one will be coming out somewhere in the midst of all this. So the paints performed really well. I was able to layer them without any issues. Where I needed to lift, I could lift. They glazed, and you could still see the layers that you previously put down up under them. I was able to get them stiff enough when I needed to in order to do really detailed painting. Could use them in a watered down wash to get really good coverage without having any issues in that aspect. They worked well with the bleed proof. They worked well with like fine liners. This graphic, but these 3 were done with the Turner. And even here, where I was really having to do something close up and kind of detail, just kind of playing off of the reference photo I found, it all worked out really well. I did week 3 of that same challenge, which was garlic, and I painted this, and I just posted this morning actually, and I really had fun doing this. The paints, you know, they're okay. They are okay. I'm gonna say that. And then I also did this rusty lock, if I'm not mistaken, with the Turner paints. And it was an experience with trying my hand at painting rust like the second time. Very new to it. And mixed with the colored pencils. Was able to use credit card scraping techniques in it. So all of my normal gymnastics that I do when I'm painting, I was able to accomplish it with the paints. So don't let anything that I say negative make it sound like I'm trashing the paints, because that is definitely not the case. As far as price goes, the set is in the budget price range, although it is a professional brand of paint. They are pretty comparable in price to like Shinhan Professional, the one that's in a blue box, or even White Knights, to give you an idea of how much they'll cost. Now, this definitely puts them on the cheaper end when looking at professional watercolors. This makes them pretty good for options for someone looking to move away from student budget grade paints and more into using a professional brand. The set currently goes for like $32.99 for the 18 color set, and that makes them somewhere around $1.83 a tube, which is not bad for a professional brand, especially getting 18 tubes, keeping in mind though they are 5 milliliters. So overall, I would say when all is said and done, I do not believe that this to be a terrible set at all. It has a lot of qualities that put it well above most student budget grade paint sets. It's relatively affordable, and they give nice results in painting despite all the cons listed throughout the video. I can see this set being a great move into a professional range for artists that are not used to using professional grade paints. However, I honestly would not readily recommend this set right off the top of my head. As far as professional paints, they are pretty decent, but I do believe that there are better entry-level professional paints available in the same price range. All right, guys, that's what I have on the Turner Artist Watercolor paints. I just kind of wanted to give you guys a quick delve into what I thought about them. Hopefully you found some of this information helpful, useful, or you just enjoyed hanging out watching the video. Don't forget to give it a thumbs up if you did. If you're new to the channel, please go ahead and hit that thumbs up and subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you're returning and you haven't subscribed yet, please go ahead and do that. We're trying to build and grow this community, and I really appreciate all of you joining me. You can hit the video description for all of the relevant links. You're going to find the Facebook group, the Etsy shop, the Patreon link, and the most recommended product list. Any references that I used in my video that were sourced from any other sites or websites will now also be listed. I'm going back and backdating any videos because I always want to give people credit for everything. I thought about that the other day. I'm like, wait a minute, I have to make sure that I'm doing that. And I think for the most part I have, but I'm just going back to make sure. So with all that said, as I tell you at the end of every single video, just keep painting and crafting.